Joining me right now is a very good friend of mine. He's with Triumph Systems, a great company that they have a lot of fun stuff that you can practice your marksmanship skills on. But he was also on Ultimate Survival Alaska, a Navy SEAL, and he knows all about weapons of war. Jared joins us right now. He's in Florida, I think, if I'm correct. Jared, welcome to the program.
Hey, Dana. I'm in Atlanta.
Oh, you're in Atlanta. You're in Atlanta. There you go. Yeah, you're pretty close. You're pretty close. Okay, so yeah. I wanted to ask you about the quote-unquote weapon of war, because everybody's been talking, even though it was not an AR-15 that was used in Orlando, everybody's been talking about this rifle, and they act as though that this is what our soldiers carry, the AR-15. They are weapons of war. Jared, in layman's terms, just give everybody a quick rundown as to how that's not correct.
Well, first of all, AR stands for Armalite, and it's the original manufacturer of the platform. And although it might look similar to an M4, functionally it is completely different. It is a single or a semi-automatic rifle, very similar to a lot of hunting weapons. So, it's not a weapon of war. It's not an assault rifle. And, the politicians that are setting this policy, they need to first be educated on what it is that they're talking about, because they are misleading so many Americans with the facts.
Yeah, well, and I mean, they act as though there are some people who think it's like the same thing as like an AK-47, or that it's a fully automatic. And I've had people argue with me, and they say, well, this is what our soldiers carry. They carry AR-15s. No, they don't.
No, that is ignorance talking. Big difference functionally. Semi-automatic, you pull the trigger in one round, it goes downrange. With a fully automatic weapon, you pull the trigger, and multiple rounds go downrange. That's it. It's that simple. It doesn't matter what it looks like. An AR is just like a hunting rifle. It works the same way.
And it's popular with women just because the little recoil, and it's easy to handle. There are a lot of women. It's like one of the most popular rifles with women.
Yeah, women, and it's a great platform to teach children the importance of hunting safety and weapons handling and stuff like that.
Right, exactly. So one of the other things that because you do a lot of training as well, and one of the other big discussions that everybody's having is whether or not, like, they look at Orlando because there was a security guard there who was on site, but when you have hundreds of patrons inside, and you have a guy who is, he's a terrorist. He's he's a terrorist. He pledged allegiance to ISIS 2 different occasions during his massacre. And he went in and took hostages, hundreds of people taken hostage. There was a lot of discussion as to whether or not people should be armed. And, I think the discussion of whether or not you should be able to go out drinking and be armed, that's, people have different conversations about that. And it's against a lot of laws state laws to go and drink and be armed. In some states and in some localities, you can even walk into a place that has a certain percentage of I think we lost Jared. We're going to get him back. That has a certain percentage of alcohol sales. You can't even go armed into that establishment. But the big discussion is how do you prevent something, since we do live in a different time, how do you prevent something like this from happening? And one of the things, I talked about it, have the bar staff armed. I'm going to tell you something, like where, my family lives in the Ozarks, that's not unusual. That's not unusual you have bar staff that they're armed. They don't play. They don't mess around with stuff like that. Bar staff are armed because sometimes, if bar staff throw out an angry drunk, that angry drunk can come back and start some trouble. In fact, my patriarchal biological grandfather was killed because a drunk was thrown out and came back in and shot him through a plate glass window. So a lot of bar staff are armed. And Jared, we got Jared back. One of the things that we were talking about is whether or not people should have been armed in the club. And I know that, we were talking about how you bring alcohol and firearms together, and that violates a lot of different state laws and even federal laws. But what about having like a trained bar staff? Or one of the things, and I like this idea, Gwen Patton from Pink Pistols was pushing this idea last week. Why not have like a designated concealed carrier? I mean, Jared, when you look at situations like this, how would you have it set up to where people were better protected in an environment like that?
Well, one of the things that we see in these types of environments is something called bystander effect. And bystander effect is, when something bad happens and it's a group of people and everybody thinks someone else is going to save the day. So I really do like the idea of you have a designated driver, you should have a designated shooter. And that's actually the way that I operate. When we go out and we know that we're going to have drinks, there's always somebody or multiple people that do not have any drinks, and they act as the DD and the DX, the designated shooter. So the people should adopt, quite frankly.
Yeah, no, I like that because I think and you can completely do that because that's sort of that's the environment that we are in right now. We are seeing increase in these attacks domestically, and that to me that makes perfect sense. I like that idea. I think that law enforcement would like that idea. Obviously, you served, you like that idea. That seems you have a designated driver, have somebody who's designated concealed carrier.
Definitely, and the other aspect is training. People that have their CCW or CHL permits should not rely just on state requirements. This is it's a responsibility of those permit holders to go out and train and to be able to put those shots where they intend to put them. You are responsible for every round that you put down range. And I can't stress the importance of training enough. Repetition and training under stress. That's how you get good.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, because that's and what do you always say that because everyone you said this in response to that phrase, everyone always says, "Oh, well, you just rise to the occasion." But that's not what you do. People don't rise to the occasion.
Only in Hollywood. In movies, people do that all the time, and they also have magazines that never run out of bullets. But you're right. People don't rise to the occasion. Rather, they default to the level of training.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And that level of training it's incredibly important. And really, ultimately, when you look at situations like this, how often should you go? If you're going to, exercise your marksmanship skills, like on average, like for the average person, how often do they need to go?
Well, you need to establish a baseline first. And once you establish that baseline, it's easier to maintain, but it does require maintenance. And, as a consumer products professional now that I build firearm training platforms and targets, I know that the consumer's one of their biggest pain points is just going to the range, just making the time to go to the range. And then there's a cost of using the facility, and then there's an ammunition cost. Well, that's a problem that a lot of people are having. So one of the solutions to that is a product that I make at Triumph Systems, the Pivotal Trainer. It's a mobile turning target system, and what a lot of end users are doing is they're buying this unit, this mobile turning target system for $400. They're setting it up in their garage, and they are training with an airsoft version of their CCW, CHL, weapon that they use, and they're not leaving their house. They're setting it up in their garage, and they're going through repetition, and that's what people need: repetition.
That's awesome. And that thing is really intense to train on as well because you have to think and assess. And there's a lot of stuff in there that you have to do. Jared Ogden.
Yeah, stress. It makes you think.
It does. I know. It took me some getting used to with it, but I enjoyed it. And you do have to work at it regularly. Jared Ogden, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Dana.
Find Jared on Twitter at Jared W. Ogden. Good guy.